Geek Therapy Radio.
Welcome. Oh, man. Whoa. Welcome to the Geek Therapy Radio podcast. I'm your mental curator, Johnny Hemberger. Gross. Thank you for putting up with my odd release schedule, or my lackluster release schedule, upload schedule, whatever you want to call it, the past week or two. I feel almost guilty for saying this, because I don't say this lightly, but I've been working a lot the past couple weeks since coronavirus since the lockdown and everything started, and stay at home and everything. My schedule has become twice as busy, and that's okay. And I don't complain about that, because I know there's a lot of people, like I mentioned before, there's a lot of people right now who would kill to be too busy. There's people that are being furloughed and being laid off and going stir crazy, being under quarantine. And it sounds silly that I have to come to work every day and do extra work for the church and everything like that, for the video services, not going to church or anything like that. We're not doing that, but for web streaming and video services and all the video editing that goes along with it. That I'm working quite a bit right now. It's become very busy. So I would love to do way more podcasts, but it's just not in the cards right now. Although that curve is flattening a bit. It's just because Easter, this started going from Lent. I almost call it Lent. Lent going into Easter, which means things were busy around here. And last week, Monday, Thursday, Good Friday, Easter, all that stuff just meant it was very, very, very busy, because pre-recording the videos and editing and everything like that. So we have cleared that part of the calendar, backed it down to one video per week, for the church at least, editing one video per week for premieres on YouTube of the services. So finally, I have a little bit of breathing room, and I don't mean to complain again, because there's a lot of people right now who would love to be working, who would love twice the workload. And it reminds me of something. I think I've mentioned on Geek Therapy Radio in the past. Oh yes, this week, sorry to get sidetracked. We are going to talk about VR, Half-Life Alyx. I've been playing Half-Life Alyx for a little bit. I'm a few hours into Half-Life Alyx. I want to talk about VR in general, though, coming up here in a moment. And I want to talk about my current solar panel situation, because I like to geek out about that stuff. But back to what I was saying. I don't remember the last time on Geek Therapy Radio where I mentioned or told a story how I was a freelancer for a year and a half, 2 years, back around 2007. I am still an audio engineer, but back then I freelanced as an audio engineer, and the gig I had set up, which actually turned out to be quite... I did more work than I thought I would. I freelanced by going to people's homes and helping them get the most out of their home recording studios. I went onto Craigslist. This was so super shady, and this is why I got out of it. One of the reasons why I got out of freelancing. But I would put ads on Craigslist once a week or so saying, hey, I'll teach you. I'm a recording engineer. I've gone to school for it. I produce albums for people. I mix albums for people. I master albums for people. I will tell you how to get the most out of whatever setup you have now. Before you go buy $5,000 worth of more recording gear thinking it's going to make you sound better, I promise you I will make you sound great on your $100 worth of equipment, on your $50 condenser microphone and your $50 mixer, in your free version of Audacity or whatever music program you have, your Pro Tools First, whatever, Reaper, whatever you're using at home. If you just have a USB microphone and a digital audio workstation, some audio software, I will teach you how to get the most out of it, to show you that you don't need to spend $5,000 on gear. You just need to know how to use what you already have. So I would go teach people for, I think it was $100 an hour. We'd schedule hour-long or 2-hour-long sessions, and I would tell them straight up, hey, 2 hours, in 2 hours, I will have you so far ahead of where you were at before you hired me that you might not need me for another session. Not that everything is so simple, but I will have you well set on your way to know what to look for, to know how to learn what you need to learn, where to go from here, how to process the information you get once we're done with this session. So I would teach them how to do things like basic EQing techniques, how to use their audio compressor, how to use their limiters, how to mix levels, where to start with the foundation of the mix, things with mic placement for different instruments and your voice. And it's kind of basic theory, and they were always amazed. I had no idea I could sound this good. I thought I needed to have all this more equipment. I thought I needed to have a $2,000 mic preamp. I thought I needed to have $700 version of Pro Tools and all these plugins and auto-tune. Like, nope. You just need to know how to use what you got most efficiently, and you will be amazed with what you can produce out of your own home with just what you got. So I freelanced like that for a year and a half or two, and it was sketchy. I would go to places that I literally thought I'm going to get stabbed. I would pull into these apartment complexes and think, well, this is it. Luckily, I'm single and don't have a girlfriend or a wife or anything like that, because tonight I'm going to get stabbed. So I did that for a few years, met some cool people, had some good times, had some shady times. There's only one person. It wasn't even when I was freelancing. Only one person ever has asked for their money back, and I gladly gave. It was because I encouraged them to take their money back. It was a rapper and just wasn't. I was his first reality check, I think. I basically, after the first session or two, I said, I don't know how to put this gently, but I think we shouldn't do this anymore until you have practice, are better prepared, because we were just wasting time, wasting his money. And there's a lot of people out there who would have thought, he's paying you, even if he sucks, who cares? But the thing is, maybe, I don't know if I have a heart. I mean, I think I have a heart, but I could tell he was struggling. He worked at Walmart. He was bringing in his lyrics on scribbles of napkins and notebook paper. And he just wasn't very good. This was the guy who I told you, this is how I got to this idea, this anecdote about the guy who wanted to sound like 50 Cent. He says, yeah, make me sound like 50. I was like, but you're not 50 Cent. You need to establish your own persona, your own character, your own unique brand. 50 Cent has 50 Cent covered. The world doesn't want another 50 Cent. The world wants whatever your unique take on it is, whatever your unique story is. That, and he just wasn't good. It was obvious that he would never practice. I'd say, so you writ all these notes and you would bring me these crumpled up papers and scribbles of lyrics with there was no measure to them, if that makes sense. There was no syllable. I don't even know what the words I'm looking for. There's no, I'm blanking out. I'm having such a problem blanking out on things today. They just didn't line up. The rhyme schemes didn't line up. The amount of syllables per line didn't line up. There was no structure to any of it. It all just sounded bad. And each take he did was just all over the place. It was all horrible. Every iambic pentameter, everything was just terrible. There's nothing to what he was doing. And I said, you should take this time to practice what you're doing. And he said, okay, he was pretty angry. He's like, okay, and then give me my money back. Go find someone else. By all means, I'll give you your money back. I'm telling you this because we work together a little bit. I call you an acquaintance, dare I say a friend. Please save your money and practice. Practice before you do this again. So when he's back to freelancing, and this is how this ties into coronavirus and quarantine, and me being busy, and so many other people praying that they can be busy right now, that they could be busy right now. When I was freelancing, every day was a struggle to find out where the next dollar would come from. Every day, the amount of stress with how am I going to pay my rent? Feeding myself was the furthest thing from my mind. It was how do I keep, the priorities were pay the rent so I don't get kicked out. Next would be, do I have enough money for electricity so that I can run the air conditioner or the heater? Second was going to be, I guess it was internet at that time, broadband internet, because I needed a way to send files to each other and work and put up the Craigslist ads and communicate with people. So internet and cell phone and everything. Down on the list was how I was going to feed myself. My cat, I had a cat. My cat at the time was higher on the totem pole with how far my money went, my dollar went. Feed my cat first and then feed myself. There were times I was at the point where I had nothing of any flavor in my apartment. I would have a bag of rice and maybe some salt, and I ate some salted rice more times than I could count. And the only thing that I had in my apartment that had actual flavors was cat food. So every once in a while, yes, this is where I'm going, every once in a while I would eat a piece of cat food just to have something with flavor. And this is also where I learned a lot of life lessons of what you do and don't take for granted. When I would be bummed out that, I was early 20s, 22, I think I was 22 years old, thereabouts, thinking, oh, all my friends are doing, it's seeming like everyone's doing so well but me. I'm just thinking, I remember the air conditioner turned on one night. The compressor kicked on, and then I felt cool air on my face. And I was just reminded in that moment, I have a roof over my head, and even though I'm scraping by, the air conditioner still comes on. They haven't cut off the electricity. I still was able to pay the electricity bill. I can run the air conditioner, and I have a roof over my head, and I do have a bag of rice in the pantry, and I do have cat food in the pantry to feed my cat and take little bites of myself every once in a while. I'm not even lying about that. Cat food doesn't actually taste that bad. But it was just that reminder, the air conditioning coming on. So much that we take for granted, but that air conditioner coming on that one night was like a slap. It brought everything into perspective. Dude, shut up. You have air conditioning. You are living in the lap of luxury compared to most people on this planet. So one thing about freelancing was there was a lot of downtime. And I was self-quarantined at that time because I literally could not afford to go anywhere. I could not afford to burn gasoline in my engine. Whatever gasoline I had in my car had to get me to the next gig, and just pray at the next gig that the person did have cash on them so they could put some gas in my tank on the way home. But there was a lot of downtime. I couldn't afford to go anywhere. And one of the other... what I learned in that time, one of the many things I learned in that time was that I hated waiting tables. I hated when I waited tables. Quitting waiting tables was one of the best things I've ever done for myself personally. I hated waiting tables with a burning passion. I waited tables at Cheesecake Factory. I loved everybody that I worked with, all the camaraderie there with my waiting friends. I made a lot of friends working at Cheesecake Factory, but the job itself, I hated waiting tables. But do you know what's worse than waiting tables? Do you know what's worse than working a job you hate? Having no job. Having nothing to do. There were many days when I was freelancing that I thought, I'm just going to walk back into Cheesecake Factory. My manager said, if you ever need a job again, we'll toss you an apron, you get to work. There are many times that I thought, I'm just going to put my tail between my legs. I'm going to go back to Cheesecake Factory and wait tables again, because even that job that I hated, that was wearing on my mental health, really, literally it was. I'm not a violent person, but the day I quit, actually the day before I quit, I was so angry and frustrated at something that happened that I punched the steel door going into the kitchen. I punched it hard. I punched it hard enough to actually hurt my hand. I definitely broke something in my hand for sure. This was not something that went away after a few hours. It was weeks of a sharp pain in my hand. Didn't have health insurance at the time. What am I going to do about it? So I just kind of coddled it. But the day after I did that, that was kind of the warning, the wake-up call for me. I was like, I don't need this. This is making me punch a steel door. That's not me. I need to get out of this. So I had my 2 weeks notice in before that. This was 1 week after putting in my 2 weeks notice, and then the next day, I was on call for a running shift, like a food running shift. It's like, well, so I just told my manager the night before. I said, I don't mean to be. I would prefer to do this the rightest way possible, but I'm not coming in tomorrow. I put in my 2 weeks a week ago. I'm calling it now. And they cared surprisingly little. They were just like, okay, well, if you ever want to come back, we'll toss you an apron. We'll put you right back on the floor. Okay, wow, all right. So I left there in good standing. But the freelancing was maddening. The amount of stress and downtime, and you have plenty of time to stress out about where your next dollar was going to come from. So that's how I sympathize, even though I am not currently in a quarantine type day in, day out monotony, staring at my own walls of my own home situation right now, like so many other people are. I remember what it was to be like that, a self-imposed kind of financial quarantine. I couldn't do anything except stare at my own apartment walls and dwell on how stressed out I was about money. And I think a lot of people are there right now. And a lot of people would kill to be double booked like I am right now. And that's all I really had to say on that subject. There are freelancers who make it work. They freelance and they turned it into a legitimate, thriving business, and that is amazing. Part of me thinks maybe I could have turned it into something legitimate and thriving, but at the time I decided to stop freelancing. I went to work at Sherwin-Williams, I think, paint company. And I love working there. But then at the time that I decided to give up freelancing, Craigslist, it was becoming apparent how risky using Craigslist exclusively to conduct business was. The stats started to roll out, people being murdered over Craigslist transactions and all the other shady stuff happening. And I thought, it would just be a matter of time that I show up to some person's greasy, dark apartment and get stabbed. The joke would be on them because they would have killed the person and I had no money. What would they kill me over? I had nothing. But my dad did warn me. They said, son, people will kill you over nothing. If you're just walking around downtown like you don't know where you are, don't know where you're going, and looking vulnerable, people will kill you over nothing. They will mug you and stab you and take your wallet, and they will check what you have in your wallet after you're dead. So they will kill you over nothing. And so that was in the back of my mind, freelancing. At the time, all the reports are coming out how dangerous Craigslist was. I was like, people, they're not going to kill me over $100. I'm not going to have $100. They'll lure me in the apartment, and just because they feel like killing. And maybe I was the unlucky person at the wrong place at the wrong time. I remember one time, separate story, and I will talk about VR in a moment. And of course, in the title and podcast description, I will put the timestamp of where I start talking about VR. But I haven't podcasted in a few days. Forgive me if I just want to talk at length about stuff. I think most of you listening have come to expect that. And honestly, most of you listening are probably listening because you find it somewhat endearing or at least interesting to hear me ramble on about old stories or just thoughts going in my head. That's one thing podcasting is for. Yes, there's specific subjects. You tune into a podcast about fishing to learn about fishing. This podcast is pretty open-ended. So there will be 20 minutes or so 30 minutes sometimes, even longer, where I just pontificate and speak and talk and speak from the heart. And I think a lot of my audience are down with that. They understand at this point that I speak from my heart quite a bit on this show. But I do my due diligence in the timestamps and the titles and description to let you know when I get to the meat and potatoes of the podcasts. So anyways, this wasn't, I guess this was during my freelancing time. It had nothing to do with freelancing time, except that I was still broke at this time, and I had this friend. He shall remain nameless. We don't hang out so much anymore. We never really hung out too much, because every time we hung out, he was just I don't want to say a weird guy, but I always felt extremely uneasy hanging around him and his friends or anything he wanted to do. He was an extremely misguided soul, and I just always felt way out of my element and scared for my life hanging out with him. I could never put my finger on why was I so scared for my life hanging around this guy. It all came to a head one night. We hadn't hung out in years. I forget what year this was, 2010-ish. Or maybe it was earlier than that. I said it might have still been freelancing. It was a long time ago. He called me up. We hadn't hung out in years, and every uneasy feeling in my gut said, don't continue the streak. Don't hang out with this guy. It never goes well. It's like, oh, come on, man. Just hang out. Me and my brother. It's my brother's birthday. We're going to have a good time. We're having a good time over here. There's girls and things, and okay, that's really not all right, but we haven't hung out in a while. I'll come check it out. So got in my truck, drove to whatever part of town he was at, and I can't pull into a parking space because there are cars kind of parked in a semicircle with all their headlights pointing to the center part of the apartment parking lot. And I'm sitting back there with my headlights, and my friend gets out of one of the cars, and he notices me because he noticed me pulling up because he had invited me. And he goes, all right, man, just we're going to hang out here for a little bit. My brother is in some beef with this other guy, and I think they're about to fight. So we're just going to hang out and lay low for a little bit. I was like, dang it, dude. Right off the bat, why did I agree to come hang out? So we're sitting there for a few minutes, and one of the guys who's yelling at his brother starts waving his gun around. He pulls a gun out of his waistband, a shiny big gun, a big shiny chrome gun, and he starts waving it around and pointing it at his brother. And his brother pulls out another gun, smaller and black, probably a Glock or something like that, and they start waving around, getting each other's faces with their guns out to the side and like they're going to shoot each other. I said, that's it. I'm gone. Thank you. It was good hanging out for 10 minutes. I guess we'll talk again soon. Once the guns start coming out in a shady parking lot somewhere in South whatever Houston, adios. I'm out. Text me later if you're not dead. Good luck. Best of luck to you and your brother. In my mind, I was thinking, this is why we don't hang out. This is why we don't hang out. Once the guns come out, I'm gone. Good luck. Text me later so I know that you're alive. So I left. And that's the last time I hung out with that dude. I always felt bad for him. We're still friends on Facebook. Maybe he listens to the show. I don't know. Hope you're doing well, brother. Anyways, okay. Meat and potatoes of this episode of the Geek Therapy Radio podcast. I have been playing Half-Life Alyx. I've been playing for an hour here, an hour there. I would say I'm 2 or 3 hours into it. Saying you're 2 or 3 hours into Half-Life Alyx, it depends. That doesn't mean that I'm extremely far along in the game, because I don't really think that I am very far along in the game. What chapter am I on? Chapter 6 or 7? Maybe I'm past that. I forget. Every time you get to a checkpoint and there's a loading screen, it's a little map. I'm not giving away any spoilers. There's a map of the city, and there's like kind of your progress through the city, I guess, is on this 3D map, this hologram map. And I'm not at the beginning. I'm several stages, several save points, several checkpoints into it at this point, definitely. But it depends who you ask when you say, how far along are you in Half-Life Alyx? So people like me, when I say I'm about 3 hours along or so in a Half-Life Alyx, but I'm still at the beginning. Other people, you would say I'm 2 or 3 hours into Half-Life Alyx, and I'm 3 times as far along in the game as Johnny is. Here's why. But I think there's a lot of people like me in regards to Half-Life Alyx. It's VR. I explore everything. Every new area I get to, I explore and I mess around with things, and I'm picking things up and I'm moving things around, and I'm just looking at stuff up close. I can walk right underneath this disgusting biological blob of whatever coming out of a wall that's seeping with saliva and acid and things, and get up there and look at it and reach my hand out like I can actually touch it. I just explore each area. If there's markers or something, of course you pick up the marker and you start drawing on glass and various things. So I interact with the environment a lot. Every new area that opens up, I just look around and I explore. I kill whatever's there, and I just recently encountered I always blank out on what they're called, the face head crabs. I don't know why the heck that wasn't on the forefront of my brain, because last night I just got to the point where there are roaming head crabs, and let me tell you right now, in VR, screw that. I'm surprised I didn't wake up my wife. It was horrifying, and I let out a legit, like, brief scream. Probably a swear word, if I'm honest. The head crabs are just jumping at your face and latching on. Ah! But it's awesome. It's so cool. So first of all, now I'm trained. Every corner I turn, I'm clearing it of head crabs. Even those, well, I don't want to get too many spoilers, but I clear it of head crabs and anything else. And then I get to looking around. And you might say, well, Johnny, that makes sense if you've played the game before. You're looking for hidden items and objects, and maybe you're looking for more ammunition or whatever little tools for the game that you can use. Maybe you're looking for health. That would make sense. But no, I mean, I am looking for that, but mostly I'm just messing around with the environment. I'm literally just sightseeing. That's a good way to put it. I'm leisurely playing. I have the game set in the easiest mode possible, I think, which is just called story mode. And it's still a challenge. That's just me. That's just the type of gamer I am. I am not hardcore about it. I am not setting this to a harder difficulty. Maybe if I go back through it, I'll set it to a harder difficulty. But right now, I just kind of want to experience the game, experience the story of it all, which is amazing, by the way, and just explore it. It's a VR experience to behold. It is the best VR experience I have had yet to date. So Half-Life Alyx, I 100% agree with the vast, overwhelming majority of the critics' scores. It's not just a great VR game. It's not just, in my opinion, the best VR game yet, and I haven't played every single VR game, but without a doubt, this is a AAA title from a very beloved franchise. It's their first brand new title in years. It's the newest addition to the Half-Life story. Fully realized, fully featured, independent game, self-contained, part of Half-Life canon. So if it came out for console, it would still be one of the best games of the year, for sure. The year, to say the year, we're only a few months into the year. No doubt it's going to be one of the best games of this year. It's one of the best games of the last 10 years. I know that's a big statement. I am not alone in thinking that. Half-Life Alyx is one of the best games for any console. PlayStation 4, PlayStation 5, Xbox Series X, whatever you want, PC gaming, anything, Nintendo Switch. Half-Life Alyx is one of the best games in the last 10 years. It is exquisite in its own right. For what it is, the story, the gameplay, everything, the visuals, it is wonderful, no matter what console it's on. But It happens to be VR exclusive, and you can only play it if you have a gaming PC. Well, not exclusively. There's Oculus Quest and versions and things, but for the most part, you can only play it if you already have a powerful gaming PC that's VR ready, VR capable. There was a columnist that I read the other day. It was Sunday. Sunday was a beautiful day here in Houston, Texas. We didn't have the storms that they had in the other part of the country. Easter Sunday, I'm sitting out in the backyard. I had just mowed it. Everything was beautiful, beautiful day. I had steak cooking on the grill. It was perfect. And I'm sitting out there, and I'm reading this article. The headline grabbed me. Basically, the question was asking, if Half-Life Alyx is so good, why has everybody forgotten about it? Why wasn't, actually more importantly, why isn't Half-Life Alyx the turning point for VR like we all thought it would be? Why hasn't Half-Life Alyx put VR on the map? Why isn't everybody playing Half-Life Alyx? Why did Animal Crossing come out and Doom Eternal come out and completely overshadow Half-Life Alyx when critically Half-Life Alyx is better than all of them, according to critic scores and just praise? Not that Animal Crossing is bad or Doom Eternal is bad. That's a ridiculous statement to make. Oh, it's those games are bad. No, that's not what I'm saying. That's not even what the article was saying. Just that Half-Life Alyx is this amazing thing that was supposed to put VR on the map and get everybody else psyched up and crazy about VR. Because nothing else to date has the allure or the critical acclaim or attempted to make a VR game on the scale that Valve has with Half-Life Alyx. So, why, this is what I'm getting to here, why hasn't Half-Life Alyx been the turning point for VR like they hoped it was going to be? First of all, who's they? Is it Oculus? Is it HTC? Is it Steam? Is it Facebook who owns Oculus? Who was hoping or expecting? Who was expecting? That's a better way to put it. Who was expecting Half-Life Alyx to be the turning point for VR, which made everybody clamor for VR or to play it on VR? So the question was, to me, was a little bit, and I don't want to say preposterous, but it was, it seemed, it was a naive question. And the article did not go on. And the reason I'm not citing the article is because it's just one article. There could be other articles that that have said what I'm about to say here. But I have not read every single article about Half-Life Alyx in its relation to VR in general on the whole. I can only give my opinion of it, of the sentiment, which is as follows. Why hasn't Half-Life Alyx put VR on the map like they, quote-unquote, hoped it would? Here's the thing. VR is not easily accessible. The article I did read mentioned that VR had become as ubiquitous as it has ever been, that it's become as affordable to purchase as it has ever been in the past. I'm thinking, but you're missing so much of that puzzle. It's not just about going to spend $300, $400, $500 or more on a VR headset and all the VR hardware. You already need a powerful gaming PC to run it. You already need a powerful graphics card that costs just as much, if not more, than the VR headset itself. Now, yes, you can play VR on lesser graphics cards, that's for sure. But you still need a power, no matter how cheap the graphics card is, it's not going to be $10. It's not even going to be $100. You're going to spend some money on the graphics card. We're not even talking about the rest of the PC. Now you're going to need at least, at the very bare minimum, a quad-core processor to run VR. This is minimum. This is not even recommended. This is minimum. You're going to need a good, high-clocked quad-core processor at least to run VR. You're going to need a quite decent graphics card to play VR. You're going to need enough RAM to play VR. You're going to need enough storage space to contain the massive VR games, not just Half-Life Alyx, but the rest of your library. there is significant investment before you ever put on the VR headset, before you ever go into Best Buy or Micro Center or Amazon or whatever to buy a VR headset. You're already into it for several $100s, if not over $1,000, before you buy the VR setup, before you ever put on that headset. So it's not a matter of Half-Life Alyx should have made everybody want to play VR. A lot of people already want to play VR. It's just not as accessible yet. It's not that accessible. It is nowhere near as accessible as picking up a game console controller, picking up a PlayStation controller, or picking up an Xbox controller, sitting back on the couch, and instantly launching into a game. I deleted the tweet for whatever reason, but I mentioned on Twitter the other day, when I was all fired up about this, that to play VR requires conscious effort and conscious planning and thoughtful planning. Most people cannot just play VR on a whim like you can pick up a PlayStation controller on a whim. Oh, I got 10 minutes. I'm just going to fire up FIFA for a little bit. You sit down on the couch, just press the PlayStation button on the controller. It opens up. Your TV turns on automatically. You're back in the game virtually instantly. VR takes planning. You need to set aside a day in advance, 2 days in advance. Okay, I'm going to have a chunk of time on Wednesday night. I'm going to set aside at least an hour for VR. Because what that means to get into VR means that you have to turn on the PC. Yes, a lot of people already have their PCs turned on, I know. But you still have to go to wherever your PC is. You still have to make sure your room is prepared for VR, have all the furniture pushed out to the side, have your space, your play area set up. You have to think about that. You have to plan for that. Putting on the headset and getting into starting up VR takes some conscious effort. Yes, if your room is already preset for VR, yes, you can be sitting there at your computer and say, you know what, I'm going to play some Half-Life Alyx, and get up and push your chair back and put on the VR and grab the handles and everything like that. But it's still way easier to pick up a PlayStation controller or your Xbox controller and dive right into whatever game. So Animal Crossing is a good way to put this. Animal Crossing is extremely popular right now on the Switch because you just pick up your Switch and you're playing Animal Crossing. Either you're playing it in handheld mode or you're playing it with across the room on your couch on the big screen TV. Very easy to play Animal Crossing. It's very easy to play Doom Eternal. Just fire up whatever you're playing Doom Eternal on and you're playing. You can go from scrolling through Facebook to Doom Eternal and be playing in less than 20 seconds. You can't do that with Half-Life Alyx. You can't do that with any VR. Before you play VR, you have to look around. Is my room set up for VR? Where are my sensors at? Are my sensors still in the same position, or have they been moved around by the dog or by you putting a soda can or a beer can on the desk and accidentally bumping the sensor? Do you have to reset your play area, your safety boundaries? It's conscious effort and time that you have to put aside to play VR. And remember, that's on top of the cost of entry to play VR. Most people aren't going to shell out $400, what have you, on top of what they already paid for their computer system, plus the game for $60. To get into Half-Life Alyx, you're at best probably around $1,000. Versus to get into Animal Crossing, you're in at around $300, less than $400 to play Animal Crossing. You buy the Switch, you buy Animal Crossing. If you buy the Nintendo Switch Lite for $200 and Animal Crossing for $60, I figure it's $60. I haven't downloaded it. You're in for less than $300 to play Animal Crossing. Same thing with Doom Eternal. You already have it. The game's $60. That's all you need. You need the system and the game. System and the game. System and the game. For VR, you need system, VR hardware, and game, and time. So that's why, that's just my opinion on why Half-Life Alyx hasn't taken off like gangbusters, even despite it being so good, being so well received, and so critically acclaimed. You know what? Flying in an F-16 fighter jet is also fun. People have rated it very highly. Flying in a supersonic fighter airplane. That is a thrill of a lifetime. Now let's talk about how you actually do it. Let's say you were invited to fly in a fighter jet for free. You still have to put aside an entire day for it. An entire day you have to plan on it. Because they're not just going to put you in a fighter jet with zero training at all. You're going to have to go through some sort of orientation before you take your free fighter jet ride with your Navy buddy or your Air Force buddy or your NASA buddy. However you're going to get into a fighter jet, doesn't matter, for free. It's going to take significant time investment. It's highly rated, though. People love it. It's kind of the same thing with VR and Half-Life Alyx. People love it, highly rate it. They say everybody should experience this. They leave out the part where it costs you around $1,000 just to get in. With hardware and the game itself, not even counting $60 for the game itself. That's cheap. $60 for Half-Life Alyx is a wonderful price for the experience that you're getting, but it's everything that goes along with it. The computer, the hardware. That's why there is not a game on the planet. If Half-Life Alyx is the best reviewed VR game, the most critically acclaimed VR game to date, and it can't have spurred this rush to Best Buy to buy VR headsets and buy VR hardware and people build computers to play VR, nothing will. The other thing is quarantine and coronavirus. And yes, I remember the article stating that it seems like the perfect time for people to get into VR. They've got all this time on their hands. They're in quarantine. They should be playing VR, right? Are you kidding me with that statement? Really? Are there a lot of Best Buys open right now? I mean, I'm sure there are, but it's harder to get VR right now, period. You may live in an area where all stores are shut. They're not letting anybody in, social distancing or not, nobody's getting in. You may live in an area like that. Also, and most importantly, a lot of us don't know whether they're going to have jobs when all this is through. So the last thing on their priority list is to spend $400, $500, $600 on a VR headset. How are you going to sell that to your wife? How are you going to sell that to your spouse? How are you going to, if you can be a woman trying to explain to your husband or your boyfriend that, honey, we're quarantined, we're really bored, I think we should get VR. And your husband or your wife is saying, we are both furloughed. One of us has already lost our jobs. Both of us may have lost our jobs. All I'm saying is now it's not the time for a lot of people to be indiscriminately spending $400, $500, $600 on a VR headset to play Half-Life Alyx, despite some journalists saying they have all the time in the world right now. Why aren't they playing Half-Life Alyx? It's not a priority right now. It doesn't matter how good the game is. It doesn't matter how much I and many others love Half-Life Alyx. It's not a good time. And even if it was a good time, let's take coronavirus, COVID-19 out of the equation here. Life is just normal right now. Everything's normal. It's still, Half-Life Alyx cannot possibly have any hope to put VR on the map or save VR or cause the boom in VR. It can't. The technology itself has to get better. VR technology itself has to get more efficient, more accessible, and cheaper. That's all. It doesn't matter what the game is, how good the game is. VR itself is tough to get into. There's hurdles between the average person getting a VR. If the average person who has a gaming PC, let's say there's an average PC gamer, and he's already built his gaming PC, has a big, strong gaming PC library, but he's at the store and he's thinking between, there are some exclusives for PlayStation 5 and there's exclusive for Xbox Series X, but there's VR. His dollar is going to go a lot farther getting the console. Let's say there's people out there who don't have gaming PCs. There's many, many people who don't have powerful gaming PCs. And they've got $300, $400, $500. And they're looking at a VR headset that also requires another several $100s just to use the VR headset. Or they got the $300, $400, $500 and they're looking at the new Xbox Series X or PlayStation 5 or even a PlayStation 4 for that matter. They just want to play video games. They're going to get the console. Or they'll spend that money towards building a gaming PC. VR is so far down the list of what to add to people's gaming setups. It's expensive. It's an expensive add-on to your gaming PC. And, truth be told, last night when I was playing Half-Life Alyx, there's still a big bugaboo. There's a fly in the honey of the fact that you're very aware. After a while, you are very aware that your face is smothered in a headset. You're very aware that you're tethered to your computer. You're very aware that your hands are holding controllers. The controllers are great, by the way, but you're just aware, and the headset becomes tight on your face, and it's sliding around, and you're sweating. Your eyeballs are getting sweaty. It takes away from it. It doesn't matter how long you can game. You can game for less time in VR, where you can sit for 16 hours a day playing a video game on your butt in a chair, playing whatever for 16 hours. If you're hardcore like that, there's no way you're going more than a few hours in VR. There's no way. A few hours at a time, I mean. You're going to have to take it off for at least 20 minutes just to let your face rest. Let your body rest. It is not a smooth, effortless experience. It takes effort. And I do love VR for that reason. I do love that I sweat physically when I play VR. Playing super hot VR, you're sweating. It's great. But to recap as we wrap up here, there is no experience in VR that's good enough to make people clamor to buy VR. And I know what a lot of you dirty minds are thinking. And can we just be frank for a moment? Just okay, let's put on our let's be mature for a second. Here's the truth. Pornography. Pornography has always been one of the most potent catalysts for propelling new technology forward. And I mean visual technology, digital experience technology. If there's a way to virtualize sex further, porn will make that technology, we'll push it even just further into the future. It's just the way it is. Sex is a powerful motivator. So, not even pornography has made VR so popular that everybody is rushing out to the store to buy VR. Not even sex has motivated people to go out and buy more VR. Now, maybe there are some isolated people who just have a real addiction and they need VR because they think they need VR because I don't know. For some reason, the idea of talking to a real woman seems more difficult than spending thousands of dollars, $1,000 on a VR setup. I don't know. We're not going to delve into the psychology of it all. I'm just saying, Half-Life Alyx is the best game of all time for VR. Sex is a powerful motivator, and not even pornography has made VR widespread consumer yet. The average person isn't going out to buy VR because the technology itself is limited and it's expensive. Once it gets to the point where you can just sit on your couch and put a visor on, like a pair of glasses, not a whole headset that's strapped to your head, but once it gets to the point where you just take on, remember Google Glasses or Google Glass, where it's kind of augmented reality in otherwise normal looking eyeglasses? You have to slip on VR like a pair of light sunglasses. That's how VR has to be, and nothing else. Nothing else. No controllers. It has to be able to read your hand movements. It has to integrate as many biometrics and as much natural movement of your own body to get you into the VR experience. VR is hard to, this is an understatement. It's hard to program for. It's hard. They're still trying to figure out what the most natural way to interact with the virtual world is. That's why you have different manufacturers of VR, and they do it differently with the controllers. Oculus does it different than HTC. Some games try to involve no controllers at all. It's just cameras on the visor and in the sensors on the desk, like reading your hand movements to try to make it natural. And even then, We're so used to the conventional way that you interact with video games with the joystick and buttons that it's foreign. You would think that having the VR would make things more natural, but it turns out it's a lot more cumbersome in many ways to play a game in VR. You have to get used to it. You have to get Half-Life Alyx, I will say this, is the best integration of modality in any VR game yet. You can choose different ways to even move your character along in the game. You can choose different control schemes. You can set it up the way that best suits you, but still, at best, there's a learning curve. You have to relearn what you're doing and relearn how you interact with the environment. Yes, many ways are more intuitive. You reach out, there's a bucket, you reach out and grab the bucket, pick up the bucket, throw it across the room, whatever. But it's still, as intuitive as that is, you're still manipulating a bucket using a hand controller. There's triggers on the hand grips and everything. You're kind of relearning that. The aspect that you are physically interacting with your environment is a concept to get used to. Whereas you're just sitting there with a joystick with a console. Let's say you're playing whatever normal game on your console, playing Call of Duty or something like that. You're so used to how the control schemes for a joystick works versus now you've got two joysticks in your hands or no joysticks for some technology they're trying to develop. It's difficult. You're also confined to an area. You designate your play space. The way you move your character is extremely unnatural. You get used to it. Half-Life Alyx does it the best yet, but it's still, I'm just saying, overall, it's unnatural that for the most part, you're not walking around your environment. You are standing in one place and moving your character with controls to a different spot on the map. You are not walking around freely the way you are with a joystick playing Call of Duty on your big screen TV. Because they found that it is extreme. This is the case for me, I can speak personally. It is disorienting to have your physical feet in the real world planted on the carpet, but have your character in VR moving forward and moving around a space. It throws off the juices in your brains. It throws off the equilibrium in between your ears, and a lot of people feel like they're going to fall over. There's parts in Half-Life Alyx that make me stumble a little bit when I'm climbing up ladders in Half-Life Alyx. It makes me, okay, things are moving a bit more now. It doesn't make me sick or queasy. It's just it throws you off for a second. It triggers in your brain that not fight or flight instinct, but that self-preservation instinct. This is not a giveaway, but there's a ladder in Half-Life Alyx where you're on top of a building. You're crawling around buildings and things, and there's a ladder 5-6 stories up, and you grab the rungs and you look over the side of the building. Oh, you're 5 floors, and there's that immediate thing in your brain that makes you clench your hands close around the rung of the ladder. You're not clenching anything in real life. You're just grabbing the air, but for a second, you feel a little bit unstable. So the way people move in VR is something I don't see how they're going to get around that without having some sort of huge cumbersome pad that you put in the middle of the room, like a treadmill, like a 360-degree treadmill, which do exist. This type of technology does exist, but it's still a giant thing to put in a room. If I haven't been painting the picture clearly yet, there are significant hurdles beyond just the cost of entry that make VR almost impossible at this point to be as easy to get into as just sitting down with a console, picking up the controller, and playing some Call of Duty, or playing some Madden, or playing some FIFA, or playing some Rocket League, whatever. VR's not there yet, and it's going to be a very long time before it becomes this universal technology. Not to mention the price would have to come down significantly. Everything would have to be included for the price of a console video game. Everything. Significant hurdles. And for all those reasons, and probably more, that's why, as great as Half-Life Alyx is, no, that's not going to be what saved the VR industry or propelled it any more forward. If one of my friends desperately wants to play Half-Life Alyx, theoretically, if you're listening to this outside of quarantine time, they can just come over to your house and play Half-Life Alyx. And even then, it would be you would have to explain things to them. They would have to get adjusted to VR. The way to get started with VR is not by playing Half-Life Alyx. It's by playing something where you just sit there and put the headset on and things happen around you while you don't move. You're not touching any controllers. You're not doing anything. Start with like a 360 video, flat 2D video. You're just looking around. Oh, rainforest. Neat. Oh, this is really cool. I'm on a White House tour with Barack Obama. Neat. Then work them up to some sort of 3D experience where they're still sitting there, but they're in this virtual polygonal forest or whatever. Oculus has a lot of good kind of entry level, bringing you up to speed on VR, getting you acclimated, like dipping your toes in the water. And now you're down to your knee, down now to your cranberries, and you get used to that. Now you're to the belly button. Now your nipples are under, and you're fully acclimated to the water. That's kind of like what VR is. If a friend says, oh, I can't wait to play Half-Life Alyx on VR. I've never played VR. I want to play Half-Life Alyx in VR. There's going to be a good hour at least of them dipping their toes in the water because, frankly, a lot of people are going to put on the VR headset for the first time and get nauseous. There are people out there that just can't do it. Sitting or standing, it's such a foreign effect to them that they have to wean themselves into it. So many hurdles. It's not fair that some publications, it's not like they're bashing Half-Life Alyx, but they scratch their heads. Why isn't this caused the boom in VR like everyone expected it to? Because there's so many forces at play here with VR. There's so many forces. Anyways, that's it. Before I start going round and round in too many circles. What can I tell you? I'll remind you of the Patreon page if you want to support me on Patreon. There's all sorts of little funny projects I like to do on YouTube. Fun projects. Patreon helps with that. Remember, 10% of it goes every month to help further mental health research, and help those with mental health issues. That's the Patreon. It's on the Geek Therapy Radio website. It's just top right corner says Patreon. You can get to it through there. I just did an awesome show about 5G and coronavirus where I had professors from the University of Houston on there to talk with me about all that. And now there's people with face masks trying to walk in here. So I will see what that's about and get back to you shortly. Actually, no, they just looked in at me and they're walking away. It's like I'm living Half-Life. What do they want? Like there's flashing lights going on and everything. That's because I do know they're testing the alarm system of the building, but it's disconcerting. Flashing lights. I know you can't see this on a podcast. I'm explaining it to you. Flashing lights and 3 or 4 people walked up to my window with face masks on. And I just kind of waved at them and they walked away. A real life Half-Life. What was I talking about? Yeah, I was signing off. Thank you for listening to Geek Therapy Radio Podcast. I can't reiterate enough that if you like Geek Therapy Radio, that you tell some friends about it. The best way that this is going to grow is by just sharing it with your friends. And I know that's a tall order, and it's a game of numbers because there's a lot of podcasts out there. There's a ton of podcasts out there. So I appreciate that you are listening to this right now, let alone that you share it with your friends. The fact of the matter is, most people aren't going to like it. If you share it with 10 friends, 9 of them won't like it, guaranteed. But there's a chance that one of them will. With 100 people, maybe 99 won't like it, but one does. That's the game of numbers in any sort of media outlet. When you see YouTube channels, sorry I get so sidetracked with this stuff. I know I'm wrapping up. When you see YouTube channels with 10 million subscribers and you think, oh man, everybody's subscribed to that YouTube channel. Well, the fact of the matter is that most people aren't. Most people in the world, there's 7 or 8 billion people in the world. 10 million out of 7 billion is almost immeasurable. It's a fraction of a fraction of a fraction. So it's a game of numbers. I remember a radio personality that I looked to for advice many times. he stopped me in my tracks and said, you don't have to get everybody to like you. The goal here is not to get everybody in the city of Houston to listen to your show. That 6 million people stop what they're doing at 6 o'clock on a Sunday or 10 p.m. on a Saturday night to stop to listen to Geek Therapy Radio. No, you want 1%. You want, if you could get 1% of 6 million people, you would be doing just fine for your show. You would be successful. You would be feeding you and your family if you could get 1% of people. Globally, 1%, it would make me a millionaire many, many times over. So that's some advice here at the end that I can impart to you and what you're doing with your art. And maybe you're doing a podcast, maybe you have a YouTube channel, maybe you're doing something creative. You're putting yourself out there in some way and you're feeling downtrodden that not everybody likes it. Almost nobody is going to like it. And I mean that in the most encouraging way. Almost nobody is going to like what you're doing, and that's fine. That is fine. Nothing happens overnight. You're not going to get that 1% of people or that fraction of a percentage of people overnight. I've been doing this for 3 years. There are podcasts out there that the amount of listens that I have in total that I can see through the Spreaker analytics, the amount of listens that I have to in total are what other people get in one day, one podcast. And it's not even that much. Some people might upload a podcast and get millions of listens within a week. Joe Rogan, the total amount of listens I have right now, it doesn't register with that's on that scale. Doesn't even register. But I can't think about it that way. And you can't think about it that way. Oh, I put this thing out there and only 100 people listen to my song or something. Well, don't get discouraged. It takes time. Do you think anybody knew who John Mayer was when he was just in his bedroom playing his guitar, doing high school, whatever? No. Nobody knew who he was. It took time, even for a big, huge act like John Mayer. It takes time. That's the one thing that I don't think gets stressed enough. And doing any sort of creative endeavor to try to turn a profit from it it's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of time. And every time you're feeling down, I can speak for my own personal experience. Every time that I feel the worst about what I'm doing, that this just isn't working, and I should quit, I should go on to something else that's going to make more guaranteed money. Every time I feel at that lowest point, something good happens, a little break. It's like a little tease. Except that's not a tease, it's actual progress. I'll let you know right now, it's still up in the air, and honestly, I don't think it's going to happen anymore, but we'll see. I was keeping it under my hat a little bit, but Coast to Coast AM, George Norrie is a friend, is a mentor. They were doing a production that was going to roll through Houston in June or July, and they wanted me to help MC the event, to be the local liaison in Houston, to go to the big theater and introduce George Norrie and sit on the panel. And it was going to be great exposure for Geek Therapy Radio. Great exposure. But now coronavirus, I doubt that's going to still happen. We'll see. That's good exposure. And the other thing, I know I'm wrapping up here. I was wrapping up 15 minutes ago, probably. It's not just about getting exposure. It's about persevering, putting in enough time so that you can get some breaks. It's not 100% about getting listeners and viewers or whatever you're doing, followers organically. A lot of it, most of it, I would say, is someone with more power than you have liking what you're doing and promoting you through their channels. I don't mean YouTube channels, but I just mean through their network of influence. Whenever I have Clint from Lazy Game Reviews on and he shares the podcast, which I don't think he shared the last one. I don't think he got it. I got to check with him. Anytime he shares with his audience, I get new listeners. I get new dedicated listeners. Half of you probably listening right now may have found me through Lazy Game Reviews, the 8-Bit Guy, or Colin from This Does Not Compute, or elsewhere. But I don't have any clout. I can't help promote them on the podcast. I can help promote them on the broadcast. That reaches significantly more ears. That's significantly more exposure, and that's how I draw most of them in. But for the most part, James Rolfe and huge people like that, Austin Evans, they just like what I'm doing. They just liked what I was about, and they came on and gave me their time because they liked what I was about. They don't have all the time in the world. They just think what you're doing is neat, and they want to help you out because what you're doing is kind of cool. And that's part of it as well. And all of it just takes time. You can't give up because you never know what's right around the corner. You have to be smart and wise and keep your day job, but you can't give up. It's a very tough decision to make, to give up. And I'm not putting that out of my head that the odds are that there's a possibility that I may have to sign off one day for real. That maybe if I say, okay, I got fired or whatever, I can't have the podcast, I can't host it anymore through this avenue, that I would tell my listeners, hey, I have to go to this new platform and the show is going to be called something different possibly, that I know that I just know the odds are, the actual fact is that 99.9% of you wouldn't follow me over. And I don't mean that as a slight against you. I just mean that it would go under your radar. And that just means that you probably, wouldn't have listened to the episode to hear me reference that I was ending the show or that I was going to a different platform. Most of you probably just wouldn't catch that. And then by the time you wondered, I haven't seen Geek Therapy Radio show up in my feed recently, you'd have already forgotten about it. That's just the reality of it all. I have no plans to quit Geek Therapy Radio. No plans to quit the show. I am in no immediate danger of getting fired or anything like that. Still going strong. But I like letting you know just kind of behind the scenes, behind the curtain here at Geek Therapy Radio. Now I'm signing off. Thank you so much for the bottom of my heart for listening to me ramble for the past hour. But I haven't done many episodes. You are worthy of love. You are worthy of giving and receiving love, and you are worthy of your own self-respect and self-confidence and self-worth. Please know that. If I go off the air tomorrow, if this is my last show for whatever reason, forget everything I've said in the thousands of hours, hundreds of hours previous to this. Forget all of it. The only thing I want you to keep in your mind is that you are worthy of love in your own self-confidence, in your own self-worth. Let those words rattle around in your brain forever. Please. Thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you in the next one.